So while we wait for everyone, I think I would just want to say good morning, good afternoon to everyone who has joined us. Welcome and thank you for participating in this webinar from part of the Jurisdictional Exchange Network. My name is Leonie Aurora. I'm the Landscapes and Partnerships Lead for the Tropical Forest Alliance, TFA. We are hosting this jurisdictional exchange network as a place to, as the name suggested, to exchange knowledge between various jurisdictional initiatives and approaches between the practitioners, the implementers, also those developing concepts on various things needed to make sure that jurisdictional sustainability can be achieved, but also to link with the private sector as one of the key actors who can support jurisdictional sustainability and also benefit from jurisdictional sustainability. Today we are very excited to welcome conducting the Jurisdictional Exchange Network webinar with Lingkar Temu Kabupaten Lestari, or LTKL, the Sustainable Districts Association in Indonesia, my home country. So I'm very excited to to welcome our friends here from LTKL. This is a 1-hour webinar. Before we start, I pasted some technical information for you on the chat. We appreciate if you could post any questions you have on the Q&A box. And if you have any technical issues, please contact Jessica Milo at webforum.org. And just to remind everybody that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording of the webinar will be available on TFA website, as well as our newly launched Jurisdictional Approach Resource Hub. Addresses are available on the chat box. So what we are going to have on this webinar is to have LTKL actually present findings and lessons learned from their experiences in implementing their jurisdictional sustainability framework that's called Regional Competitiveness Framework, or in Indonesian, Kerangka Daya Saing Daerah, or KDSD. And we are joined here by Gita Syahrani, Head of Secretariat from LTKL, Ristika Putri, Program Manager for LTKL, and Patricia Romasi from Knowledge Management Coordinator at LTKL. And we also have David Hollander, sorry, David, if I pronounced your name incorrectly, from ICL Alliance, to provide a wider global context to the need for data and jurisdiction to make claims and to understand actually progress in jurisdictional sustainability. So without further ado, I will hand over to Gita to start off the presentation. We will have question and answer session at the very end, but please do post your questions, and if any if it can be answered quickly, we will answer them directly on the Q&A box. Gita, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Kaleoni. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's a very exciting time for us in LTKL, or Sustainable Districts Association. For those of you who doesn't know us, we are a district association that was founded and also run by the district themselves. And us, the three of us here, represent the secretariat team, playing a backbone role to this collective action that is initiated by the district government all over Sumatra, Kalimantan, and as well as Sulawesi, as you can see in the map. Several of our jurisdictions represent commodity production that focuses on 7 commodities, including coffee, cacao, rubber, palm oil, non-timber forest products, spices, coconut, and others. And we also have jurisdictions that are forest or peat rich, and this is represented by the district of Sigi in Central Sulawesi, Bone Bolango in Gorontalo, as well as the 3 districts in West Kalimantan, Sanggau, Sintang, and Kapuas Hulu. We realized that some representative from West Kalimantan is also attending this session, so welcome, Bapak and Ibu. in terms of the actual goal for us to communicate and to achieve in LTKL is that we want to help the district member to boost their regional competitiveness through a collaboration of multi-stakeholders. And of course, this is based on 3 national targets, that is SDGs, emission reduction, as well as open government. If you can go to the next slide. We are basically looking at existing data right now that represent the total active members of ours, almost 7 million hectares of forest and almost 2 million hectares of peat, with more than 1 million smallholders representing the multi-commodities that I was just explaining. Now, we have a target to be dissolved by 2030. The assumption is that we are going to be integrated with the National Association for District Government, because we managed to prove that sustainable jurisdictions is something that is doable and visible. And this is, of course, by support from all of you guys that's attending this webinar. Our target by 2030 is to protect minimum 50% of the total size of the forest cover in all LTKL members and minimum 50% of the total size of peat in LTKL members, while improving welfare of at least 1 million family in and around critical ecosystem area in LTKL member districts. Now, to achieve this target, we have several formula, but we realize that we cannot only focuses on the target without thinking about the process. If you can go to the next slide. Basically, we're trying to incentivize both progress as well as process. We call this in performance packages in terms of the district lingo. We have both the target, as I was explaining, as well as the process. When we think about those two performance, we also think about how do we incentivize this performance. And our incentives package comes from the public sector as well as the private sectors, hopefully. Now, from the public sectors, we can look at national government budget. From the private sector, we can look at supply chain. But there's a second layer to it, in which in terms of public incentives, we can look at development support, and in private sector, we can look at non-supply chain support. In order to matchmake these two between performance and incentives, we realize that we need to pace ourselves. We don't wait until everything is perfect, but we have to celebrate the progress in each year. So year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, you have a different type of matchmaking between performances and incentives. How do we matchmake these two? We have a formula that we call the 5 pillars or 5 blueprints of sustainability in LTKL. If you can go to the next slide. The first pillar represents actually our biggest sort of hope, the policy and regulatory framework that offers permanence to the sustainability vision. The second component is something that all of you are familiar with, the planning and goal setting. It's very important to incorporate sustainability vision into the spatial plan as well as development plan, let alone the budgetary plan. The third component is something that the GEN network is facilitating, the multi-stakeholders governance, how we can collaborate between government, private sector, civil society, and the community themselves, while pillars number 4 or blueprints number 4 talks about what can we support, what are the available portfolio to support, what are the available portfolio to invest in. Now, in order for all of these 4 pillars or 4 blueprints to be upheld, we realize that we need one thing, which is a joint reporting and communication strategy that is based on agreed benchmark. And this is why today is very exciting for us, because we finally are going to talk about whether we can agree on what data we should measure our progress based on. Now, if you can go to the next slide, I'm going to explain quickly about the regional competitiveness framework, our Kerangka Daya Saing Daerah, and it has a origin from the decree that was issued by our president Joko Widodo, that is obliging subnational government to push beyond what they're doing right now and be more competitive. So instead of only focusing on sustainability in a traditional way, we look at sustainability as something that can boost competitiveness of district all over Indonesia. And in order to do so, we are basing it on national compliance. Again, emission reduction, we have our national action plan. We also have our national action plan on SDGs, and we have our draft national action plan on open government. We also have other national reporting that subnational government must adhere to, which is the Domestic Affairs Ministry and the National Investment Board. Now, the trend right now is not only to talk about performance from the government, but you also have to recognize shared contribution from other actors, including private sector, as well as development partners. In order to matchmake the two again, we look at the investment appetite side. We look at sustainable landscapes rating tools. We look at verified sourcing area, the Terpercaya study commissioned by the European Union, as well as the RSPO jurisdictional certification. We try to identify what are the main aspects that everybody thinks are important when it comes to jurisdictions, and what are the indicators that supports those aspects, so that the district government can concentrate on these aspects and indicators in order to report and communicate their progress to multiple stakeholders. Now, ISEAL is one of the most important stakeholders that we are collaborating also right now, because they also provide guidelines so that these benchmarking exercise can also have something to guide them, in order to agree on way of communicating and way of reporting progress. Now, I will give the floor now to David, to let him explain about what ISEAL is concentrating on and how KDSD is relevant to their journey as well. Go ahead, David.
Great, thanks, Gita. So my name is David Delner. I work for ISEAL. For those who are not familiar with ISEAL, we are best known for working with standard and certification systems such as RSPO or FSC. But for a number of years, we've been working on jurisdictional and landscape approaches as well. And what we're really interested in there is understanding how we can develop these into credible market mechanisms that can complement existing supply chain tools and standards. And to do this, we've been engaging and collaborating with a range of organizations, including LTKL, which is really one of the leading players in this space. And before hearing more about their work, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes here and step back and provide some extra background to the work LTKL is doing by explaining how we have been trying to define at a very high level the different components or ingredients of an effective jurisdictional approach and jurisdictional progress. Then how we can measure progress and outcomes at a jurisdictional scale, and then how companies should support and incentivize that. So I really just have one slide that I wanted to show here, and that kind of summarizes the overall thinking that we have been putting together at ISEAL. So I don't know if you can move to that slide, Leonie. Thanks. So you will see on the left hand, in terms of what should happen at the jurisdictional level, we have identified these two broad components. So first of all, there's this need to define the structural outcomes. And this is really, what Gita was explaining around the blueprints. And, we see this as a set of governance and processes that need to come together at the jurisdictional level. So that's, goal setting, planning, multi-stakeholder engagement, etc. But then secondly, we also need to look at performance against specific sustainability outcomes, such as deforestation, biodiversity, socioeconomic indicators, etc. Now, the reason why LTKL's work is so interesting and important in this space is because they're not only helping to define what these structural outcomes and these performance areas should look like, they're also doing the really difficult and challenging job of trying to generate and collect the data for them. And we'll hear more about that just in a minute. But I do want to turn your attention to the third component we have identified there, and that is all about what the private sector should do to support and incentivize jurisdictional initiatives and jurisdictional approaches. And so there the question really is, what should companies, either within a jurisdiction or outside of a jurisdiction sourcing from it, what should they do to contribute and engage with jurisdictional initiatives? But then also, what type of data and reporting do we need to see from the company side to understand whether they're actually living up to their commitments and the claims they're making. And so when you step back and look at this, actually what we're trying to say is that we need a positive feedback loop with what is happening on the one hand on the jurisdictional level, and then on the other hand at the corporate level. And of course, you can imagine that jurisdictional initiatives, they will not be able to really reach their goals as effectively if they're not supported by the corporate sector, and vice versa. Companies will not be able to make true on their sustainability commitments if they're not looking beyond their supply chains and engaging with jurisdictional initiatives. So that's kind of the main message I wanted to give here. We think LTKL is really important in laying the groundworks for a positive feedback loop like that to happen in the Indonesian context. And I just wanted to add that we are publishing some guidance that contains some of this broader thinking that will be published in a couple of weeks, and that will be available on the TFA Resource Hub. And with that, I'm going to end here and hand over to Ristika Putri. She's the program manager at LTKL, and she will have some further insights on the work they're doing on the regional competitiveness framework.
Okay, thank you, David, for your great explanation about the ISIL work. Based on the David mentioned before that the data reporting and claims on the structural level at the jurisdiction is very relevant with our work in LTKL also. According to our work about the summarizing the several framework, like Gita mentioned before, that we divided into 5 key aspects and also break down into 18 indicators. So the regional competitive framework, or KDSD, we have the 5 aspects. The first one about the planning and goal setting. So we are focused on the planning and goal setting. Why? Because in this aspect, the district needs to build the strong foundations in the plannings. For example, like integrating this development planning, like RPGMD or the open government planning. The second one about the economic resilience. In this aspect, focus on the district economic must be resilient and strengthened. For example, like the indicator in this aspect mentioned about the macroeconomic growth from the local resources and also transformation from the commodity supply chains. Third one about the social resilience. In this aspect, specifically talking about the community or indigenous people involvement during the development process at the district level. And four, as the environment and also natural resources management. In this aspect, mostly because as we know that the district doesn't have any mandatory to protect their forest area and etc. So the district trying to do the sustainability effort at the environment and also the natural resources management. It's not only about the protected area like forest, but also about the renewable energy as part of the environment and also natural resources management. And last but not least, like Gita and David mentioned earlier, that it's not only about talking the incentive for the district, but also the district also provide the incentive scheme for the local stakeholder in their constituents. For example, like the smallholder, and also there are like the small medium enterprise and also the village community. According to this process, that mostly that now I want to explain more about the KDSD development process. Almost like the 2 years, we developed the co-creation process on the KDSD development. Since 2018, that we're trying to develop we're trying to help the district because we are a secretariat to make sure the minimum benchmarking from the several framework, and we summarizing and synthesizing, and then we are consult with the stakeholder to determine the indicator priority. So that's why we are using the indicator co-creation, involve the many multi-stakeholder. It's not only about the district government, but also we encourage the national government, private sector, and other stakeholders. After we got input from this indicator priority, we got input from the stakeholder, we are summarizing and we are combining with the result from the desk review, and we discuss with the LTKL district member and also the network partner. So during the General Assembly, the LTKL district member have agreed to commit to implement the KDSD. So we mentioned there are 3 district members, Sintang from West Kalimantan, and also Riau from Siak from Riau province, and also Gorontalo province. Gorontalo from the Gorontalo province as part of the KDSD pioneer district. Instead of the in general assembly, it's not only about talking about agree on the KDSD pioneer district, but also we agree on the indicator on the KDSD. So 18 indicator has got approval since in general assembly. Another process after we got approval from General Assembly, we are moving to the mean of verification co-creation. What is means? The MOV co-creation, it means how to measure the indicator based on so we encourage the stakeholder. We are discussing the stakeholder from the national government and others to ensure the connectivity between indicator and also the mean verification. So almost 5 months, we developed the MOV co-creation with the other stakeholder. After we got input from developing MOV co-creation, so the next step is about we'll launch the trial KDSD 1.0 on September 2019 with the district member and also the network partner. After we decided and after we launch the KDSD 1.0, we are going to the implementation process. So we are go to the baseline data check based on the indicator of the KDSD. So in the KDSD baseline data check, following the process, it is very important how to encourage the district level, all of the district stakeholder level to involve in this process. So we are from the LTKL Secretariat to trying to facilitate the process and also connect with the partner, of course, because we know that we don't have any expertise on the about the methodology or technical process. So that's why we're trying to connect the district to the partner. And recently that we are working with C4 and also Art Innovation to develop the methodology like the questionnaire to break down the technical process of the KDSD implementation process. And it has been discussed with the district stakeholder. After we got discussing with the district stakeholder, we make a brainstorming session with all district stakeholder at the district level, of course. And we started from Gorontalo, followed by Sintang and also Siak. In the technical workshop, we have many interesting insights from the stakeholder in the district, and we decided together and the stockholder and also the district governments trying to make KDSD district team formation. So what is the KDSD district team? It is specific on this ones. The district trying to make the KDSD multi-stakeholder team because the district understand how how is the important thing. The data is not only coming from the government, but also it's all of the district, all of the stakeholder who work in the district. So you can see at the slide, mostly in the 3 districts, we have 2 types of the team. We divided into core team and also the working team. So for the core team, it's a data provider. So mostly all of the stakeholder at the district as part of the core team, and the working team, and maybe we can call it enumerator as a data consolidator. So you can see the diverse of Sintang, Siak, and also Gorontalo, that they have the main representative from the district agency, NGOs, academician, and also private sector coalition as part of the working team. And all of this work as part of one data policy as a mandatory from the national government too. Back to the process, the important thing in Indonesia especially, after we held after the district stakeholder agreed to make the KDSD team, so the next step is the KDSD district team formally appointed with the legal formal by the district government. For example, that maybe you can see at the slide, this is the sample, the legal letter of assignment from Sintang district. They already issue the letter of assignment by the head of Bupati, and they can run the process data checking to ensure that it's make sure the trust from each stakeholder. So that's why the letter of assignment is very important in this process. After the letter of assignment established, so the next step is the data checking will be started. So the next question, how is the progress? So I just want to hand over to my colleague, Patricia, to share about what is the result and how's the progressive from the district level. So please, Patricia.
Thank you, Ristika. Hello, everyone. My name is Patricia. I'm from Knowledge Management in LTKL. I want to share with you the summary result and key insights we have gathered from the KDSD implementation so far. So as explained by Ristika, the KDSD cover 5 aspects that is divided into 18 indicators and requires up to a total of 101 means of verification. We use 3 types of data as our means of verification. We include descriptive data stated in official reports and documents. We include statistics data and spatial data. Unfortunately, the available data so far is mostly statistics and descriptive data, whereas the spatial data is harder to check because sometimes it is not available in a district level. If you could go to the next slide, we can see the result from 9 months of a multi-stakeholder process led by the district. From our 3 pilot districts, Sintang had proved to be the most progressing with almost 72% data checked during the baseline phase, followed by Gorontalo and Siak. I also want to note the difference of our district's progress before and during COVID-19 pandemic, where you can see that the district had significant increase, more than 50% between the 2nd and the 4th month. However, during the pandemic, we saw a significant decline in the process. In 5 months, even Sintang, our most progressing district, can only increase 11% on the data availability check. This is due not only to the shift of government focus, but also because of the social distancing protocols that forced the activities to be moved online. Can you go to the next slide? So on the screen, you can see the average number of available data gathered by the district during the baseline process. These available data were gathered through various means, including desk review, focus group discussions, and interviews. So what we've learned so far from our pilot districts is that data related to environment and natural resources management aspect is the least available, followed by social resilience and incentives to local stakeholders aspect. The reason for this is because the means of verification for planning and economic resilience aspects are mainly data supported by national surveys that is carried by National Statistics Agency. So now the focus is on the current lack of data availability in the remaining 3 aspects. To help you understand this further, I have listed some of the means of verification for these aspects. Some of the examples from social resilience aspect is information on Human Development Index, indigenous people's rights, including recognition from the government and FDIC implementation, and also district level conflict resolution mechanism. On environmental and natural resources management aspects, some of the means of verification are on partnership related to protected area, critical land restoration, fair hotspot status, and water and air quality management. As for the incentives for local stakeholders, some of the means of verification includes ease of doing business regulations and data on incentives for independent smallholders, village government, and village communities in the district. So can you go to the next slide? In this slide, I have listed some trivial information on our means of verification. I have listed some of the hardest and easiest means of verification to check so far. From this information, the noticeable difference is that the easier ones tend to be statistical data mandated by the higher level government, as I've mentioned before. And we will discuss more about this when we get to the challenges. But for now, I want to explain to you some of the key takeaways that we have gathered from the KDSD implementation so far. On the next slide. The first one is about multi-stakeholder team that proved effective to have an agreed benchmark. So you may notice from the graph I showed earlier about the progress that the time it took for the district to finish the baseline data took months, which is relatively longer if compared to the needed time if we just hire a team of researchers or consultants maybe. But the process itself is important to have an inclusive process that results in an agreed benchmark across stakeholders. And the second is the importance of knowing the power dynamic and relationship within the district stakeholders in relation to data management, which can help us identify the most effective form of interaction that can encourage cooperation within the multi-stakeholder team. And the third is on incentives, because we have found that incentives prove to be a strong motivation point for the stakeholders. And this does not only include financial support, but also include exposure, collaboration opportunity, recognition from national government, technical assistance, and etc. We have also noticed the role of a backbone team or a backbone figure in a multi-stakeholder setting is vital to closely engage and build rapport with each stakeholder and between the stakeholders that is involved in the team. And as I have explained before, about how the COVID-19 pandemic had badly affected our implementation process, one of the reasons is the fact that most of our jurisdictions are still adjusting to a data-driven decision-making, which results in a low importance of a database and lack of digital archives habit in a district. So we have also identified some challenges. If you could go to the next slide. So I have listed the 3 major challenges we have found, which includes the gap of availability between mandatory data, which are mandated from the provincial or national government, and voluntary data in the means of verification. We have also found that there is a lack of data trickle down from the national to subnational level. And we have also noticed that bureaucracy and data transparency problems do not only occur in the government, but also in other stakeholder settings, maybe in the NGOs and private sectors also. So to respond to the challenges we have, I'll give the floor back to my head of secretariat, Gita Syahrani, to explain the next steps we have planned for our implementation. So go ahead, Mbak Gita.
Yes, thank you, Patricia and David and Ristika. In terms of next step, thank you so much for coming again. And hopefully the next step will involve all of you, because at LTKL, our tagline is collaboration. So we cannot do it alone. We have to basically look at you guys to also come and support and come be part of the journey. The second phase of KDSD is the filling the data gaps. As you can see from Patricia's example, we don't even reach the 80% mark yet. And this is something that we need to figure out together, how to best align. Somebody asked a question from Terpercaya, and the idea is if we have a platform that concentrate on national data, then we can also collaborate where our sub-national data checking and the national data checking is meet in the middle, so the data becomes more complete. The second part is we would like to actually inform our result back to the benchmarking reporting framework, so including the Terpercaya study, the verified sourcing area. I know some of the colleagues are also here. We're also communicating with the sustainable landscape rating tools as well as the RSPO jurisdictional certification on the lessons and insights we got from the ground, as Patricia mentioned, and how should we move forward to address the challenges. In terms of additional districts that are willing to implement KDSD and actually step up to the challenge, we have Musi Banyu Asin, Aceh Tamiang that is also interested to collaborate with the verified sourcing area. We also have the district of Sanggau and Sigi. One is in West Kalimantan and another one in Central Sulawesi. So this is exciting until 2022. This is something that we're aiming to do. In terms of alignment, as David mentioned, there's also a talk with ISEAL on how to best align. We're also doing another sort of exercise in terms of alignment with land scale in Sintang and West Kalimantan, with the accountability framework initiative we're doing in Aceh Tamiang and also in Sintang, hopefully. And we're doing an alignment with the Alliance for Water Stewardship, AWS, in the district of Musi Banyu Asin. In terms of the consultation process, actually the most exciting part of all this is actually to be able to support the district members to issue a voluntary joint reporting on their progress towards competitiveness. And the hope and the reason why we're calling it joint reporting is because it shouldn't just accommodate what government is doing, but also how private sector are contributing to achieve those targets, how development partners are contributing to achieve the target. So at the end of the day, it becomes a joint sort of agreed progress by all of the stakeholders. And we're doing a consultation process starting in November until February 2021, with the hope of actually getting it approved in the next General Assembly of LTKL, because at the end, we are just a secretariat. The members have to agree and approve all of the different products that we're issuing. In terms of the collaboration and what we plea for the participant that's here, we are, maybe you can go to the next slide. there are three main things that we look forward to collaborate with you guys. The first is in terms of connectivity on that, both data collection as well as data management. The hope is that we can, again, meet in the middle, the one that are collecting from national source and the ones who are checking directly with the subnational government can meet in the middle and have a more complete picture of what's happening in terms of sustainability progress. The second part is on the technical assistance, because at the end of the day, it is very much a critical point, as Patricia mentioned. We need more technical expertise that is also aligned with the national policy, including the one data and one map, and how that can be trickled down to initiatives like KDSD. And the third is, of course, we'd like to ask for all of your participation to the next phase of consultation that is focusing on the jurisdictional profile as well as the joint reporting and communication. Hopefully, we will get more benchmark to be aligned with KDSD. The reason is going back to the vision, the original vision, which is trying to make sure that these jurisdictions that are committed to sustainability have a more streamlined way of not only measuring but also reporting and communicating progress, so they're not stuck with making more and more reports, but instead we help them streamline and help them focus on the most critical indicators that everybody are expecting from a district that are calling themselves sustainable. So that's it from us in LTKL. Thank you so much for our guest speaker, ICL, as well. We yield the floor back to Kak Leonie. Thank you.
Thank you, Gita. Thanks a lot. Everyone, I would like to encourage you to put up questions on the Q&A box. You can write it in English or in Indonesian, but we will answer here in English. And there is one question, Gita, that have come up that I'm wondering if colleagues from LTKL can answer. So the question is, super happy to see that LTKL is moving forward with this framework. Congratulations. Did you or will you also test the framework with the market players, buyers, international buyers, and perhaps for some commodities, local buyers? So linking it to direct market access. This is from Narita Lia Panjaitan.
Yeah, thank you, Mbak Narita. In terms of actually trying to involve buyers and market players, this is something that we have very carefully incorporate since the very beginning. So like Kristika mentioned, the process of KDSD is quite lengthy, and the reason why it's quite lengthy is because we want to make sure that we accommodate also voices from direct players of incentives, possible incentive providers. So in a way, we also already have sectoral players, not only the industrial size like palm oil and rubber being involved in the process, but we were also involving sort of smaller scale companies that focuses on other commodities that LTKL consider priority, including sourcing company that focusing on spices and non-timber forest product, as well as coffee and cacao. We're collaborating with Kopi, for example, the Sustainable Coffee Platform Indonesia, as well as the Sustainable Cacao Platform in terms of trying to align. Now, in order to actually prove whether this is acceptable or not, that's the main reason why we're launching this public consultation process from November until February, with the hope that not only that the template is useful for the district members, but it's also useful for the end users. And the end users in here is those who are interested to actually work with jurisdictions, not only limited to, large-scale investors, but it also can target domestic investors that wants to go hand in hand with the jurisdictions where they think they can potentially benefit from. So the answer is definitely yes, and it's already integrated from the beginning, and we want to expand it even more through the public consultation process, Kak Leonie.
Great. Thanks a lot, Gita. For everyone, please do post your questions on the Q&A, or I think you can also use the chat box. But I have one question, Git. So,
Sure.
It's for me, it was really, I guess, grounding to see the amount of data available, right? KDSD, because it is a summary of so many frameworks, do have such a big number of indicators and means of verifications, right? But however, seeing how, yeah, it's the gaps between what data needed by these national and global frameworks and the availability on the ground, and also, of course, also of the process, the 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 process that LTKL is going through with each member districts. How is it going to, how do you see it being scaled up to other districts, especially considering that LTKL has only now 12 districts, and there are hundreds of districts in Indonesia?
Yeah, so there are two things in terms of trying to link it back to sort of our scale-up strategy, right? Essentially, so one clarification in terms of the amount of means of verification. So after comparing with other benchmarking exercises, actually we have less because what we did was actually summarizing those indicators that are critical so that it is reflected in at least two of the benchmarking exercise that we were comparing to. Now, because of the differences between data that are actually supported or mandated by the national government, hence it also has a support from the National Statistic Agency, versus the ones that are much more voluntary in a way, that is referred to by the investment appetite side. We can actually see the discrepancies between, for example, economic means of verification versus the environmental means of verification. Now, there are three types of reporting that right now, coming from the public policy side, Kaleoni, the districts are more serious to look at, right? Then number one is actually their reporting, their annual reporting to the Ministry of Home Affairs, because their reporting, their performance reporting to the Ministry of Home Affairs reflect the way that they get budget allocation also from the Ministry of Finance. So the reason why we are also collaborating with the ministry since the beginning, and although it hasn't been fully successful, and the hope is that by the second phase, we are able to also work with the ministry to better integrate the indicators that right now are considered important by fellows that wants to work with jurisdictions into these performance indicators coming from the ministry. So at the end, it's not as if the district are repeating themselves. It's actually you produce one report and you can use it for multiple reporting purposes. So the way that it's being replicated to other subnational, hopefully not only district, but also provinces and cities, is like that. And however, we cannot go to the ministry and say, you have to incorporate this data before we can actually show to them what are available and what's not. And that's the main reason why we start with data availability check. So we are also being cautious of what we are proposing to the national government. So it ended up being as an opportunity to collaborate instead of a burden to be forced to collaborate.
Great. Thanks a lot, Gita. We have another question. Gita and LTKL team, thanks for such elaboration. The question is, can you describe what it means for KDSD to align with land scale and other global frameworks?
So I'll let Ristika also speak a little bit to this. By alignment, meaning that we literally take the benchmarking side by side, comparing indicators and means of verification. In some instances, no means of verifications are available yet, but it only focuses on indicators. So we compare the indicators, but for those who already has means of verification, we actually take the means of verification and try to look at how this can be best integrated. So in a way, it's not about competing or looking at different benchmark for different purposes. This is actually about consolidating by allowing district to report not only to one benchmark exercise, but to multiple benchmark exercise. So this is why colleagues from Rainforest Alliance was interested to work with us in terms of trialing land scale in Sintang district in West Kalimantan, because they also want to understand better whether the indicators and the means of verification that is incorporated into land scale can be implementable. And because the district government already formed this team of KDSD, rather than building another team, might as well work with the existing team and use the existing process to compare and contrast the new indicators that are being proposed. So we don't ended up, confusing the jurisdictions with multiple requests of data check, data availability check as well. I don't know, Ristika, if you want to add on to that.
Okay, maybe I just want to add a little bit about the Gita explanation before that. Recently, for example, I just look at for the land scale in Sintang. That land scale itself, they will help because like recently Sintang is the progressive one instead of the other district. And land scale will help to the second phase of the KDSD implementation for filling the gap, because some data like Kaleoni mentioned before, that so many data that are not available at the district level, and land scale as one of the frameworks trying to help and filling the gap of the data gaps in the existing data in the Sintang district. So that's why each framework actually, for example, like land scale, like accountability framework initiative, they have their own process to integrate in the KDSD implementation process at the district level. So mostly like they are trying to collaborate, we collaborate together to ensure the filling the gap of the data to the second phase of the KDSD implementation process. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thanks. David, would you like to comment also on that question and all of the overall findings?
Yeah, sure. So I think the question on alignment is really important. So we are, aside from working with LTKL, we've been working and engaging with a range of other initiatives that are looking to set, for example, global frameworks on landscape or jurisdictional sustainability, and land scale is definitely one of the leaders there as well. And what we think is important is that there is some common understanding across all of these initiatives what credible practices are going to look like in terms of data management, in terms of goal setting, etc., in terms of expectations. And so the work that LTKL is doing is really useful in that sense, because they're already looking at the consistency and the coherence between these different frameworks, and that also means they can convey that to the districts in a coherent manner. And that's really important, because you can imagine that if at a district level they have to look at 4, 5, 6 different frameworks, and then maybe some companies might have other priorities, it can become really burdensome and confusing really quickly, and that's actually something you want to avoid. I think it's almost saying that we want to avoid some of the challenges we've seen around sustainability standards and labels, where you have so many standards and labels that it becomes an ineffective situation. Now, to go back to kind of the overall findings, I think the findings on how we're progressing on data collection are really interesting, and I think actually quite encouraging. We know that some of these things are really difficult to get to, and I think one point that I wanted to pick out is that there's a lot of data being collected, either by governments, by companies, by NGOs, and the better we get at bringing all that data together under one kind of jurisdictional initiative, the quicker we're going to get to actually an accurate picture of what's happening in that jurisdiction. Now, we know that there's a lot of barriers to that. Sometimes governments don't want to share, sometimes companies don't want to share, et cetera, et cetera. But these are really some of the barriers I think we will need to break down to get to better data collection over time. So I'll just end there. I have a couple of questions as well, but maybe we can see if there's any others from the audience.
Great. Thanks for holding back, David. So there's one question from Stephanie Lim. It's a great framework, and see how this will help advance sustainability development advocacy as well. How might private sector companies support the district's reports, like structuring in a certain way? I think, Gita, you will be very happy to see support from private sector to structuring the report. Would there be a special private platform for the private sector to share such data?
So yeah, I think Ristika speak a little briefly on the process itself in terms of formation of the KDSD team at the district level. So at the end of the day, again, yeah, we are the secretariat and we help facilitate this process to happen. However, the way that it's being incorporated in each of the district are different. In terms of, you know, who are involved in the working team in some of the district like Siak, where Stephanie's company is also involved, there are already representative from private sector that is actively participating in the KDSD team. So in terms of the SOP for data sharing and data management, that is in total control of the district. Again, Secretariat only facilitate, we only check the availability. And the core principle that was agreed in terms of the SOP and the data sharing, that it's aligned with the one map, one data policy. So it's also still under the umbrella of the national policy. Now, if we look at the actual mandate coming from SDGs reporting, for example, Kak Leonie, in SDGs reporting, there's no longer, you know, the need to only report government progress, but the specific wording is that subnational government needs to incorporate shared contribution from other actors. So by looking at that as an opportunity, we look at ways to incorporate, you know, for example, looking at Siak as an example, if Green Siak roadmap has 10 indicators that they want to fulfill, and then they can help report, we can help them report that progress using KDSD framework, then we can actually incorporate out of those 10 challenges or that 10 goals, who did what, where, and when. And hopefully the report would also reflect that. And this is the type of conversation that we look forward to having from now until February through the consultation process. Hopefully this is something that is not only useful for the district, but also to all of those who are contributing, including the private sector. And that's why alignment with David's, the ICL guidelines on claims and verification and, you know, communicating what have you contributed to a certain effort becomes something that is strategic for us, because it also helps us think about how should we tailor this report so that it also align with companies' needs and development partners' needs. Hope that explains, Stephanie.
Great, thanks a lot, Gita. There's a question directed to Patricia. What is your strategy to boost the collection and use of spatial data? I mean, what system do you think you would want to propose? Is there sufficient capacity in all districts, etc.?
Okay, thank you, Kak Leonie. As Megita has explained before, this baseline phase is only the first step in the overall KDSD implementation, and the next phase is for technical assistance. So we were hoping that we can fill the data gaps in this step by collaborating, because as we have explained before, Secretariat role is only to facilitate and connect the district with external support. And we were hoping that we can find collaborators for the districts to help them with technical assistance and capacity buildings or infrastructure buildings for the spatial data needed. So we can hopefully fill the data gap in districts. Thank you, Kak Leonie.
Great, thanks. Well, I mean, it's really apparent, yeah, how much support a district needs in terms of not just going through the process of getting to be more sustainable, but also like having the data to show the progress, right? And I think it's up to all of us, right, to support as much as possible. We are 6 minutes to the hour. David, I don't think I will be able to give you time to ask your question, but I'm sure you can WhatsApp Gita and other LTKL colleagues. But I just want to give one final statement from David representing the global audience, and from Gita representing the LTKL before we close this webinar.
Yeah, I won't add much more here. I think it was really interesting to see these findings. I think this is a really exciting area where a lot of innovation is also happening, and I'm looking forward to hearing the next updates, and also seeing how we can use the TFA jurisdictional jurisdictional exchange network to really circulate and get more ideas going around these challenges that we're all facing. So thanks for that.
Yeah, just echoing what David mentioned. I think the gist of it is all about, you know, collaboration going forwards, because when we look at the key takeaways, there are much more challenges rather than things that are working, right? Like, we are very glad to be able to invest time in building this in such a process-oriented manner, although it's slower than most of, you know, you are used to, but we think it's worth it. And this is actually a critical step so that we are agreeing on the same benchmark to measure success and to measure failure. So at the end of the day, it becomes a shared something to celebrate in the jurisdictions. Now, again, just like to remind you on the consultation process, LTKL is going to share a blast of through MailChimp, through our mailing list. And if you would like to be included in the mailing list, please feel free to email Patricia, but we are also going to upload it in the Gen resource hub so that you can have easier access to the consultation document. The other thing that I'd like to actually invite all of you that's participating and still staying until the end, thank you so much, but we would love to see you again in the Global Landscape Forum session that we're going to host on the 29th of October, and that's 6:45 p.m. Jakarta time and 12:45 Europe, Eastern Europe time, Central Eastern, I don't know, time, but it's going to talk about the jurisdictional progress, specifically on nature-based economy. So if today we're talking about pillars or blueprint number 5, that session is going to talk about blueprint number 4, that is empowered by the first, second, and the third blueprint. So we are literally going to take you on a journey where the Sintang district and the Siak district are already collaborating for a nature-based solution, and we'll get insights from the investment community, the market player, as well as the researcher coming from C4 that has been helping us. We are also going to launch the jurisdictional profile, the first one from the district of Sintang, because we like to celebrate progress, and even if it's not 100%, they managed to get almost 72%. So we would love to help them show that they're progressing during the session. We're also inviting you guys, so that's 29th of October. We're also inviting you guys to an annual festival that the district of Sintang is holding from the 2nd to the 4th of November. It's the Sustainable Districts Festival. So we are scheduled to actually be all of us gathering in Sintang this year, but unfortunately pandemic happened. But we're promising you a very exciting lineup with a celebrity pop star collaborating with nature-based music from Sintang. So this is also another entry point coming from the pillars to get the young ones excited about this sustainability journey, because at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's about the district members. Thank you so much for attending. We'd love to collaborate more with you in the future.
Wow, thanks, Gita. It's kind of hard to top that excitement, but I just want, on behalf of TFA, I would just like to thank all participants who have stayed, who have attended and stayed. We will provide recordings of the recordings of this webinar will be available on TFA website as well as the JA Resource Hub. That's www.jaresourcehub.org. And that resource center also has a lot of other resources available on jurisdictional approaches, particularly around resources that we think will help mobilize private sector support. And in fact, our next Gen webinar in November will go in depth into some of the guidance for companies that are available for companies to engage in jurisdictional initiatives. So we are looking forward to inviting you to those events as well. You can expect another email from us very soon. So thank you very much, all panelists, Gita and other colleagues from LTKL for your tremendous work. And yeah, it's really great to see progress in this area. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day ahead, and looking forward to seeing you all in the next Gen webinar.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.